This video is kindly sponsored by the fantasy RPG mobile and PC game Raid Shadow Legends. Star Wars Episode 9 The Rise of Skywalker premieres this month, and I am incredibly excited, because why wouldn't I be? Star Wars has been a staple of pop culture and an object of my personal affection for my entire life. It has inspired me creatively and personally in ways few other things have. And so to celebrate the grand finale of the Skywalker saga and move into a new age for the Star Wars universe, I thought it was an apt time to delve into just why the world fell in love with this story and this universe in the first place. It's easy to forget the real impact Star Wars has had on the world at large. If you haven't seen the documentary Empire of Dreams, the making of the original Star Wars trilogy, then please do so. It's on Amazon Prime and it's brilliant. What the documentary illustrates in more detail than I could go into right now is just how thoroughly pop culture and filmmaking was transformed by the premiere of the original film. Everything about Star Wars seemed like it was designed to fail in its current climate. Virtually everything about its story and style went against the conventional wisdom of the time, but the revolutionary visuals and excellent storytelling really captured the imaginations of many generations to come. People forget what movies used to look like before Star Wars showed up. Outside of the classic 2001: A Space Odyssey, most sci-fi movies looked like this. And while I myself have expressed my fondness for the likes of simple Ray Harryhausen adventure flicks, the rise of Hollywood's film school brats and their updated versions of classic genre sailor fare simply could not be competed with. And it was this commitment to push the medium which made Star Wars' universe more tactile and immersive than ever before. Even my own lady love Star Trek was guilty of an inherent artificiality in its presentation. In a time when movie marketing wasn't even close to the insane levels of ubiquity major blockbusters demand these days, I'd give my own left arm to experience what it must have been like to witness that opening shot for the first time in a crowded cinema. Lucas's vision and the talents of those who helped him achieve it, simply put, created something audiences had never seen before. While its inspirations were numerous, ranging from old Flash Gordon serials and Kurosawa samurai films, Star Wars was a story told with a truly fresh style. But it's that story itself which is key to Star Wars' longevity beyond a terrific tech demo. However, before we get into that, this video is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends, which I'm sure you've all heard about by now. It's a mobile and PC dark fantasy turn-based RPG which has been downloaded over 15 million times in the past 6 months. It's one of the top 3 ranked RPGs on the Google Play Store and has recently been nominated as a finalist for Google Play's Best of 2019 Users' Choice Award. We're all about good story and lore on this channel, and Raid is set in your classical fantasy realm. Imagine Lord of the Rings, but Sauron kind of won. You play as champions resurrected from the dead to fight the big bad and win the day. There are currently over 400 champion characters to collect and customize across 16 different factions, knights, elves, orcs and more, which players can build a veritable army out of to take on enemies in cinematic battles, take on other players in PvP, or go raiding together with friends in a clan. And all of this is free to play. Players get free champions, equipment and other goodies just for learning how to play. Upon completing missions, a new legendary champion is unlocked, such as this She-Ra lookalike the Arbiter, as part of a roadmap of new updates and content being added over the next 6 months. Click the link in the description and you'll get 50,000 silver and a free epic champion as part of the new player program to start your journey. Happy raiding! And now back to the regular video. Star Wars may have been technically revolutionary, but its basic story is as ancient as the practice of storytelling itself. Star Wars is of course built on the classic Joseph Campbell hero's journey. The universe and the style was something so unfamiliar to audiences at the time, but the basic story was ancient. George Lucas even studied directly under Joseph Campbell to ensure his work was hitting the right beats. But while many subpar writers begin and end their stories by simply following this structure, Lucas managed to get it right by putting his own fresh take on the idea, something which successful franchises do time and time again. The original Star Wars trilogy is a coming-of-age struggle between generations, but also more broadly a parable of one coming into their own as a person in larger adulthood. Luke Skywalker is not your typical hero. In fact, he's quite subversive. In every definition of the word, he fits the then stereotype of a nerd, geek, or wimp. The traditional hero, especially in these types of stories, veers far closer to the chiseled-jawed cowboy swagger of Han Solo. But for Luke to not only achieve heroic status as a Jedi, but also preserve what makes him distinctly him, rather than turning into a different archetype, is quite special. And it's this universal element which has really appealed to people over the years. Star Wars is the story of someone coming out of their shell and expressing themselves in an honest way to ultimate success. And when so many others pass judgment on those who don't quite fit the bill as the so-called ideal societal expectation, this is a fantastically powerful message. It's no wonder it captured the hearts and minds of so many. I've already said in a previous Star Wars related video that the reaction and consensus surrounding the Star Wars prequel trilogy is well documented, and I don't need to go into all that detail right here. Everyone knows about the much maligned digital backlot technique, the stilted scripted acting, but I'm not here to harp on the negatives. The Star Wars prequels, while heavily flawed, were ultimately a positive addition to the franchise overall, and once again to filmmaking in general. Love or hate the abundance of blue screen, the tools created for this trilogy are orders of magnitude more powerful than the already revolutionary technical achievements of the original trilogy. The Star Wars prequels really took away any restriction on what could and couldn't be seen on the silver screen. There is not a weather system, physics simulation, object texture, or animation technique that wasn't pioneered during the production of these movies, and many years later it has become standard practice in every major blockbuster, unless you're Christopher Nolan. The breadth of new spaceships, worlds, characters, aliens, and avenues for new stories is worth Jar Jar Binks as far as I'm concerned. And while it is a step down in terms of storytelling quality from the original trilogy, an entire generation of Star Wars fans grew up with these movies as their Star Wars. I know because I grew up with them. While it wasn't these exact movies which made me into a Star Wars fan, the fact this trilogy did that for so many others can only be a good thing. The most recent trilogy of films is one of the most potentially fascinating eras of the Star Wars franchise. With Lucas now not at the helm, a platform has opened up for bold new directions to take the Star Wars universe in, making Star Wars an actual gritty war movie, making Star Wars a more overt space western, or taking the opportunity to re-examine the entire franchise by way of a meta-narrative in a deconstructionist epic sure to signal the death of every YouTube comment section mentioning its name. While I thoroughly enjoy The Force Awakens for the simple, comforting space adventure it sets out to be, The Last Jedi might just be my favourite entry in the entire franchise. And a bunch of people just straight up stopped watching there. The Last Jedi itself is about the power of stories, specifically these stories. And it does this by using the Legend of the Jedi Order and Luke Skywalker as its meta-narrative to examine why Star Wars is so important to people. It shows us Luke Skywalker as a broken man, sulking in his own failures. While many people saw this as a betrayal of the character, his arc within this story is what hits the nail on the head in terms of the film's thematic goals. What The Last Jedi ultimately says is that The Legend of the Jedi, much like the Star Wars saga, isn't necessarily best used as an escapist power fantasy, because despite the great deeds of the Jedi and the great achievements of Star Wars, neither can be perfect and both will always have flaws. Flaws which, when exposed, will always feel like a betrayal. Instead, The Last Jedi presents another idea: to use the Legend of the Jedi and the moving stories of Star Wars as a tool to galvanize people behind a cause. To show us good taking a stand against evil, no matter the odds, and have us believe it. Yes, I'm going to get political here. Despite this shitstick being President of the United States, despite the ice caps melting, despite the growing divide between the rich and the poor, if Luke Skywalker can stand against an army of armor-plated, blaster cannon-wielding, gigantic mechanized walkers, then there is always something which can be done. There will always be hope. I am yet to see the rise of Skywalker just yet, but I will always be excited to see more Star Wars. Because even though these are stories about space wizards intended for children, these are also stories which truly mean something to people. Whether it means a noble hero to look up to guide us into adulthood, a window into limitless imagination, or a rallying cry to never lose hope. The technical brilliance of Star Wars is matched only by its capacity to move us deep down inside. And that is why Star Wars is awesome. Mr. Noah asks, what are your favourite aliens in sci-fi? Probably the Vorlons from Babylon 5, because they are so alien in their appearance, their lore, everything. I love the mystery surrounding them and how difficult it is to really know what any one of them is thinking at any one time. I also love the design of their encounter suits and their ships. It's like something Chris Foss designed. It's brilliant. Ben Jones asks, what sci-fi property would you like to see turned into a game? I've always maintained that the Mass Effect series is the best Star Trek game that Star Trek never made. It has everything that would make a good Star Trek game. Babylon 5 would make a killer real-time strategy game. I heard there was one in the works at some point, but it got cancelled or something. Really, I think you could make a great video game out of pretty much every big sci-fi property, just as long as the choice of game genre makes sense. So don't do something daft like make a puzzle game out of Farscape or something. Gareth Medicine asks, well, he actually doesn't ask anything, instead Gareth has given me a bunch of video suggestions. Why Fringe is awesome. I do really like Fringe. I think it's the far superior X-Files. I won't do a Why is awesome though. I've been thinking about a new video series called Hidden Sci-Fi Gems, basically to present suggestions to my audience who may be interested in certain things they haven't seen. I want to do videos like that for Space Above and Beyond, The Chronicles of Riddick, and a few other things, so I could totally see Fringe being included in that list. Class, did it suck? For those who don't know, Class was a Doctor Who spin-off show. I haven't seen it because nobody saw it. I don't know if the BBC intended this to be a full spin-off like Torchwood and just got cold feet and shoved it online, but it really doesn't interest me, so probably won't do a video on that one. Earth Final Conflict, did it suck? Once again, I haven't seen this. As I've said before, because this channel is actually part of my income now, I have to weigh up the time investment versus the reward, so I have to gauge how big a demand there is for that video before I sit down to watch 5 or so seasons of that show. Thank you for the suggestions though. Thank you so much for watching. This will be my final video of 2019 as I'm heading home to spend time with the family over Christmas. But with The Expanse Season 4, Lost in Space Season 2 and Star Trek Picard all hitting our screens, I'll have a hell of a lot of videos coming your way in the new year. Special thanks to all of my patrons now appearing on screen, you guys are awesome. Have a wonderful Christmas everybody, may the Force be with you, and as always, live long and prosper.